Hi, I'm Mark Edwards, and welcome to Musical Differences, a podcast, a conversation, a chat between friends who will discuss their musical interests, their musical obsessions, and their musical differences too. In this episode, I'm joined by Chris Tanner, aka Chris Roberts, aka Chris Roberts Tanner. Chris is an old school friend from Gorseinon back in the day. We've got lots of musical similarities and more than a few musical differences too. Enjoy. Good. Righty. Okay, look, cracking on. Yes. Thanks very much for taking some time out of your evening to do this. Now then, I'm going to start, Chris, with a quote. Some lyrics I know you like. The memories of a man in his old age are the deeds of a man in his prime. Now, I want to focus here on memories, okay? So not necessarily memories of a man in his old age. We're not necessarily on the deeds of the man in his prime. What I'm interested in here, in terms of memories, your earliest musical memories. Now, it doesn't have to be, you remember hearing Mrs. Mills when you were in the crib or something, but early musical memories and recollections. Do you have any that kind of spring to mind?
Well, I'd probably shock you on what my first 45 on LP was. The first 45 that I bought was Puppy Love by Donny Osmond. And then the Osmonds, as brothers, released an album called The Plan. And if you can listen to that at any time, it's not a bad album.
Has it got crazy? It hasn't got Crazy Horses on it, has it?
Crazy Horses on it, yeah.
I mean, Crazy Horses is an awesome track. It's absolutely fantastic.
Yeah. And there's a good couple of others on there as well. But I graduated from that, and my mother, as a birthday present, must have been 9, 10.
Right.
Bought me the Beatles red and blue albums.
Yeah, the compilations.
That was a life changer for me, and I graduated then into progressive rock. And you were either a Genesis, yes, or in my case, a huge Pink Floyd fanatic by the time I was 14 or 15. And there was a kind of an influence around some close school friends. In my year, there was Ray Lewis and a guy called Anthony Wibberley.
Yes.
But everybody liked the Floyd. And the first Floyd album I can remember being released was 1977. It was Animals. And to this day, I still listen to that regular. And then I remember Andrew Ghazi and myself at the age of 16 being brave enough to go from Swansea to Paddington, and we went to see Yes in the Wembley Arena. And they just released the album Tomato.
I do remember that one.
And believe it or not, they would do an afternoon set and an evening set. And we went to the afternoon. And I remember we came back to Gorseinon, and we had a Chinese in the recently opened first Chinese in Gorseinon, Mahong.
The Mahong.
Yeah. Those were kind of my first sort of memories. And then getting into the sixth form, there were people like Andrew Demry, now a successful record mixer.
Isn't he like an audio engineer of sorts, I think, isn't he? So
remixes on the Stones, and I believe, he met Dweezil Zappa. People like Phil Harris, Neil Edwards, Spike Davis.
Yeah,
there's some old memories there.
It's that crew. Now the red and blue Beatles compilations. I mean, you're very lucky there, to be honest with you. I mean, that's I still think they just did a re-release of that. I don't know if you saw it, but they just did a remix. And I didn't buy it because I've got a load of the Beatles box set remixes. And they cost a small fortune.
Yeah.
But what I heard of it is, I would say, really quite different. So very, very impressive, that's for sure. Which was your favorite, the red or blue?
Initially, obviously the red, All My Loving is a track
Yes.
that stand out, and I love her. I know on the releases that they've done a lot of B-sides that weren't on the original red, tracks like This Boy and great
Yes.
stuff. But
Yeah.
obviously, I prefer the blue now because the more, I suppose, drugs they were taking, the more experimental and everything they
Well, oddly
became.
enough, I don't know if you've read much of the Beatles. I've got a load of Beatles books down there, and the Mark Lewison one, which is probably generally regarded as it's an extraordinary effort. It's about 1,000 pages, and it just covers the Beatles up to, I think, 1962. So literally just to the beginning of the recording contract. So believe you me, they were a heavily drugged up band before the Red album, even when they started. But it was a different chemicals. They were out in Germany, as you'll know, in the was it the Reeperbahn in Hamburg, and I think it was Preludin is what it was, which is a speed basically. They were on slimming pills, but so that's undoubtedly what enabled them to stand on stage and play for, like, I don't know, they would do 8 60-minute sets. Do you know what I mean? With 15 minutes gap in between, they do that pretty much every day for 30 days on a trot. It's extraordinary what they did, but drug fueled and undoubtedly. So when you got onto the blue one, slightly different. I think Bob Dylan had introduced them to cannabis, marijuana, and then of course onto other hallucinogenics. But you mentioned a couple from the blue. What about from the blue album there? Which would you say standout
From
tracks?
Blue, Strawberry Fields Forever.
Yes.
Fantastic track.
Yeah.
There's a number then that they played called "Don't Let Me Down," and you know the "Let It Be" on the roof,
Yes.
Apple headquarter rooftop.
Yeah.
They played it then. I think that's a great song.
Yeah.
What's the one? Everybody had a good year. Everybody had a hard year.
Yeah,
yeah.
Well, that's off "Let It Be" again, isn't it? I don't think that's on the blue album, is it?
So it's on the new one.
It is.
Yeah.
Oh, is it? Yes. Have you got it?
I haven't got it. Well, I got it on Tidal.
Right. Okay. I got you. Yeah, because that is. I can't remember the name of it, but it is one of the rooftop numbers. I don't think that was on the original Blue album. I don't think. I might be wrong.
Yeah.
But there we go. But your mother, you said, bought the two of those for you. You must.
Yeah.
You're a very special young boy then to get that as a, whether that was a single gift. Here we are. Here's two double LPs. But you were very fortunate there. Now then, we're both from Gorseinon, South Wales. Anybody listening in can probably tell. You mentioned a few of the names there earlier. You mentioned Phil Harris, Ray, my brother Neil, Andrew Demery, and others. So we have a lot in common. So it was a small community. We're talking about the kind of, the early 1970s, I suppose. I'm born in 64. You must have been 62.
Yeah.
I born in 62, and you are now 62 yesterday, wasn't it?
Yes,
62 years old yesterday. Happy birthday for that, by the way. But so we may even, I don't know. I don't think I ever borrowed any albums off you. I don't know if my brother ever borrowed it. My brother was a bit of a one for borrowing albums. He did borrow the Red and Blue albums off somebody, and that's where I first got my kind of exposure to them. But I'm interested in the record shops that we would have had access to. Now, obviously, Gorseinon had one main shop there, which is Phil Harris's uncle, of course, which is Ken Sullivan. And is Ken still around? Yes,
he's still around. I don't think his wife, if you remember, is very well these days.
Right.
She's obviously an auntie of Phil Harris.
Yeah,
I forget her name.
I do remember her. I think I do remember her.
yeah.
But so Sullivan's, for me, was, I don't know, is like Alibaba's cave. I think, you know what I mean. It was a treasure trove, wasn't it? I mean,
A game changer then. I used to catch the 112 bus into Swansea, and Virgin Records opened.
that's right.
And I remember buying, is it Rubicon by Tangerine Dream?
Oh,
Was a record I bought there.
I think I've got that. Is that got a blue cover with like a
That's right.
water drop or something on it? I bought a second-hand version a few years ago. Marcus, I don't know if you remember Marcus. He was a friend of mine.
Yes.
He had, the guy with the long hair from Lucca.
Remember him?
He bought again Tangerine Dream in Virgin. He bought, because actually they were on Virgin at that time. I'm not sure if Rubicon was on Virgin Records, but he bought is it a live record? I think it was called. So there was a big double live album from Tangerine Dream that came out at that time. I'm not sure. Never really kind of got into that.
No.
But Virgin. What other shops were there? So you got Virgin in Swansea. Gorseinon was Sullivan's.
Sullivan.
Well, it was also you
HM
could
HMV was in
HMV
Quadrant.
might have been a little later. That was, I think, when the Quadrant appeared. So we had an early
That's
HMV
where
records.
I bought my things. You know, these ingrates these days don't appreciate what it is having to catch a bus to hear a new release.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But I think partly we benefited from that because, you know, it was, as I said, you had to save up potentially. Although it's sounding like you were maybe quite wealthy, you could just go and buy records whenever you wanted. But most of us had to save up, and then it was a major decision: do I buy A or B? You know, do I buy T-Rex or do I buy Slade or do I buy whatever? And then, as I said, even the going into Swansea and then maybe going record shop to record shop, browsing through the records, maybe trying to make a decision. I did, even on one occasion, I bought, because I got, like I said, these are to me, these are imprinted. I got tremendous memories of them. Again, Virgin Records, I should say, in Swansea, going in there and listening. They used to have headphones that you could listen to stuff to.
Yes. Yeah.
And I was listening to Eno, Before and After Science. And at the same time as that was on the headphones, if I took the headphones off, they had craft work on, showroom dummies, which was extraordinary. And also, the great thing about Virgin Records was they'd play stuff really at volume. I mean, it was loud. Sullivan's, I don't think was so much. I don't think he played much stuff there. You probably went in. There may have been something on in the background. I have no recollection of that at all. But I have a distinct, a distinct memory in Virgins of being able to go in and just hear stuff. Sex Pistols again. I also heard for the first time in Virgin. Do you remember Derek's?
Derek's, of course. Oxford Street, still there. Run by a Greek guy.
Christos.
Yeah. You remember last year we went to see Fripp and Toya. That's where I got my tickets.
Was it? Yeah, he still does a lot of concert tickets. I got my copy of Weather Report 8:30 from Derek's again back in, I don't know, and when would that have been? Maybe 77, 78. I also got Jethro Tull Aqualung.
Mysterious. I got, is the album Mysterious Traveller? That was my first Weather Report. That was bought.
All right, okay. Yeah.
And another band I've loved lifelong, and you know, when Joe Zawinul went solo, I used to buy his stuff. Got a couple of Pastorius on his own, and Wayne Shorter. And my mother remarried, and my stepfather was a trumpeter, and he got me into jazz, and you know, I'm very big into jazz now.
You've sent me lots of links. I can't remember the names of the guy, but you have sent me a number of trumpet jazz players. Even I think it may even have been, wasn't it? All right, of course, Miles.
In a silent way. you know, yeah. And I mean, the live music continued with me. Obviously, Pink Floyd, Down the Wall in Earl's Court, 1980, 1981. Went with Mighty and Andy Nutt, who lives in Perth, Western Australia now, to see both them. But the concert I saw that really blew me away was Springsteen and the E Street Band,
Right.
in Wembley, and we were bang in the front row, and remained a lifetime Springsteen fan as well.
What, for you? You became a lifetime Springsteen fan.
Yeah, I've probably seen him more than any other artist.
Right.
Went to Perth in 2017 to see him with Andy Nutt. Yeah.
I think maybe I might be tapping you up for Andy's details, maybe to get him on here as well. Here a little bit, although it might be exactly the same as your I think your musical, you two are probably about as closely aligned. You're like two peas in a pod musically, I think, isn't it? I mean, a friend of mine up here, Andy Chudzik, he went to see Springsteen in Hammersmith. You know, those original Hammersmith, very famous classic Hammersmith shows. He saw. Did you come to London to see anything in Hammersmith Odeon? You mentioned Wembley and places like that. I always think they're like, you know, aircraft hangars. I never liked, and sound engineering back then really wasn't as good as it is today. But the sound, I think, in Hammersmith Odeon, even in the 70s or 80s, would have been good. But
I saw Frank Zappa in the Hammersmith Odeon. Andy Nutt, by the way, he's coming home in August. I'll give you the date. He's home for call it home. He's lived in Australia far longer than what he ever did in Wales.
Right.
Coming on to probably, I thought long and hard. These three are not necessarily my favorite albums, although one of them is very close. But I take these as where a lot of my influences come from. I got two I've taken photos via Tidal of. One you'll be very familiar with.
Steely Dan. I can hardly see it, but I can see absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a classic.
Yeah, and my love of the Dan. I've got everything on original vinyl.
Right. I thought you told me before. I thought all your vinyl got kind of destroyed. You still got it there.
Oh, a lot of it was destroyed. No.
So is that one Steely Dan album? You'd go for Asia out of those. Any particular track?
The one I played in my funeral is Home at Last.
Right.
Which has got that very odd guitar sound on it, which I haven't quite heard anywhere else. I've seen the Dan 5 or 6 times. And I've thought long and hard about going to see them with the Eagles. But do you know what I can't get out of my head? I can't see why Steely Dan is supporting the Eagles. To me, it should be the other way around. Whether it's something to do with Donald Fagen's age and his ability. But I've seen.
Well, they're not. I don't think Steely Dan are as big they're certainly not as big in the UK as the Eagles. The Eagles were by far the bigger band. Steely Dan probably more highly regarded amongst the musicians and the aficionados of recorded music, undoubtedly. And I went to see them, oddly enough, only, I can't remember when it was, maybe 8 years ago, Beacon Theatre, New York. That's the furthest I've ever been specifically to see a gig. But I don't know the track you're talking about, but I would know. It's things like. But I'm just trying to think. What are the famous track? Asia itself.
Deacon Blue.
Deacon Blue is on there. Is it something cow? I can't remember. Something about a milkshake. I can't remember what that one's called. There is there's
Black Cow.
Right. I'll have to check. So you did mention. I'm going to pick you up on it. Then you mentioned what are you going to play at your funeral? Have you started putting together, hopefully it's a long way away, but I've also already started doing the same thing. I've been dropping hints to my kids. These are the tracks. I actually think I'm going to have a funeral that's got like a, it's got, there'll be 2 arrival times. You can get there maybe 90 minutes beforehand, you get the full set.
Yeah.
But the cremations I've been to recently, it's unbelievable. You're whizzed in and whizzed out in kind of military formation, basically. They get one piece of music maybe played, and the sound systems generally are terrible. So I don't quite know what I'm going to do here. Maybe what we should do, like a mutual deal here. If you go before me, I'll do the sound engineering at yours just to make sure that the quality of the sound and everything is good. And maybe you could do vice versa with myself, because the last thing I would want is the music then to be played. I did go to a funeral, even might have been last year, might have been the year before. A good friend, Australian guy who lived here since in his 20s, died. I think he was about 75 or 76 dying. But he had done, for his funeral, he recorded himself speaking. Do you know what I mean? So and it was a surprise to many people there in the congregation when all of a sudden out comes Peter's kind of voice from the speakers. And then, because it was done on CD, it had been burnt onto CD, the track skipped. So it's like it didn't play to completion. It got about, it was maybe, let's say if it was a 4-minute monologue, it got about 2 minutes in, and then it went, the last 2 minutes just skipped over and gone. We did get to hear it later on at the wake, but it was, again, that would be my issue. The people that run funerals are not thinking sound. Have you got any other numbers? Is that the only song at the funeral you got?
I'd just like to add there that you may not have to worry about cremation. I was in a meeting last week about the new types of ways you can actually go. You could be nitrogenized. I don't know if you, where they actually freeze you,
right,
to
and shatter you into a billion pieces. Seriously?
Yeah, that's going to be available very soon in the UK. And I think my other track that I would have to have played would be Time by the Floyd.
Oh.
Yeah.
Why?
Well, it says it all, really, doesn't it? It sort of tells everybody's life story.
Yeah. I was planning, actually. I'm just trying to think, is it Time? Is that the ticking away the moments and make up a dull day? Isn't it that one? I was going to end with that. I'm going to come back to it when we finish. But I said, but that, it is, but you say, is it everyone's life? Do you know, there's a part of me that makes me even wonder there, as to whether in some respects, you wonder whether it was a kind of like a form of programming. If you were a young man at a very vulnerable, very easily influenced age in life, and if you're continually listening, as you probably were, either on big headphones, or even wherever it is at home, you'd have been. And that was the other thing. The other thing I think was to our benefit. You played an album to death, and I don't mean to death, but you played it over and over and over and over and over and over again. And you also read the cover notes, and that was an album with the lyrics printed inside. And I would agree with you. So that verse in particular, to me, frittering away the moments that make up a dull day, waiting for someone and somebody and something
to show
you the way, kicking around on a piece of ground
in your hometown, waiting for someone or something to show you the way.
So that, we lived that. Now, was that a consequence of listening to Pink Floyd's Time? Or did the chicken come before the egg, or vice versa? But when he talks about that piece of own ground, for me, I see the Gorseinon Rugby Club. Do you know what I mean? Or Lacha Cross. Those were the two areas, or particularly for me, Lacha Cross was where is the piece of ground in my hometown where I literally did waste
Hours.
many hours, many in the persistent, consistent drizzle, which you've probably still got down there now. For the listeners and viewers, I'm now living in God's country. I'm now in Hertfordshire, where the sun shines in comparison to wet Wales and Gorseinon in particular, where everything is sodden and soaked through, and probably at this time of year still very much the same. But those are the two songs. I've gone for Hendrix, All Along the Watchtower, and so far also Fairport Convention. What's the Sandy Denny song? It'll come to me. So it is where.
Do you know?
Who knows where the time goes?
I've never listened to a Fairport Convention song or album. So
I'm stopping this interview here now.
But there's a Springsteen song called No Surrender.
Right.
And there's a lyric in that called, "We learned more from a 3-minute record than we ever did in school."
Right.
And you were recalling the lyrics there through the constant listening. Yet, you try and learn something from maths, physics, or history, geography, and you find it much more difficult to remember and learn. So there's some truth in that.
Well, I think the combination of the words rhyming and the human condition, really, we're kind of we pick up on it, but also the music. It kind of, as I said, it seeps into your consciousness. I see today, I follow a guy on Twitter, lovely young man, Billy Edwards. Actually, I think he's in college in Cardiff, and unbelievable habit for buying records, secondhand vinyl, CDs, massive. I mean, he must be buying 50 albums a week. So he's built up. He's still a young man. He's still in university. But my guess is he must have a record collection maybe now of a couple of thousand records. And I would then question from that, how many has he really been able to listen to more than once? So whereas we would have had an album, and maybe for you, which would have been then the most played album in your teenage? Is it Dark Side of the Moon?
I'm going to hold it up now. I'm going to hold it up for you.
Let's see. Oh, really?
That was my most played record.
Wow. Was it?
Yeah.
Incredible. So I'm just trying to think. For me on there, one track, obviously, which is Peaches on Regalia. And oddly enough, you'll be very impressed. Sandy Lodge did a meeting recently, and they've got the worshipful master who'd been drafted in. The master had basically come down with what they thought was malaria at the time. So they brought the IPM in, and I asked him what he wanted to come into, and he said, "You take your pick." And he loves his music. He's a bit younger than us, but he's got great musical taste. So they came in, they processed into Peaches on Regalia.
Well,
2019,
Dweezil played the whole album live, and I went to see him in a great theatre in Manchester, O2 Apollo.
Right.
And I played at Hot Rats, and the version of Peaches was sublime. Now, you mentioned Brian Eno earlier.
I did.
My third album, where I think has influenced my influences, if you know what I mean. So we got
Right.
Asia,
Yeah.
Hot Rats, and then there was this.
Gotcha.
By Remaining Light by Talking Heads. And saw David Byrne do something Utopia a couple of years back, which again was absolutely brilliant. None of them, all the music, all instruments were wireless, and they were dancing. It was fantastic.
Yeah, I saw him oddly enough in Bristol again, I'm thinking must have been 15, possibly 20 years ago. I would have come down from Letchworth down to there. Neil also had that Remain in Light. I've got a copy of it here. That's Once in a Lifetime is on there, I think, isn't it? And that is
Yeah.
yeah, classic kind of Talking Heads. So what was the second one then? So you said Asia.
Asia, Hot Rats.
Oh, it was Hot Rats. So that would be over right. Okay, okay. I'm
Yeah.
stunned though. But you played that much Hot Rats.
Oh, yeah, loved it. Willie the Pimp.
Willie the Pimp.
Yeah, do you remember that?
Yeah, isn't that Captain Beefheart on there? I don't
Captain
know. Is it?
Beefheart singing that.
I mean, I can take it, but I mean,
I mean,
I'm
what's
not.
his Trout Mask replica?
Oh
I don't know if you've
no,
seen it.
no! Don't go there.
I mean, Johan loves it, but that's one I just can't get into.
It's terrible. It's terrible. I think on that one it was always was and still is. It's just like Forbidden Fruit. People liked it because they thought it was so extreme, but it's just to me, it's just pretty rubbish, to be honest. I mean, I think he even had. I've read a bit about the. He even had. I think he had Ray Kuda playing for him at one point, and then he's treating the band. I don't know. It's just blues, and it's, in my opinion, not very good blues either. So I was never a fan of that. I have got. I'm just trying to think. Bongo Fury, which is a Zappa Beef live album with Captain Beefheart, but the rest of the stuff. And for me, Zappa wise, as I said, Peaches, I'll go with that, and then I would be picking out things like. And this is again very Gorseinon for me because I'm sure I remember going to Andrew Demery's and sitting in his, you'll probably know the front room in his parents' house on the corner of Alexandra Road there, and listening to it would have been Joe's Garage. Joe's Garage is that was mind blowing, and I do like Joe's Garage. I don't know 1, 2, and 3. And that era, and again, Shake Your Booty, yes. So that whole piece, that era around there, it is a disappointment that I never did. I didn't like Zappa enough to have gone to see Zappa back then. I've seen Dweezil Zappa a couple of times. I saw him at the Albert Hall.
Did he have the lady Sheila Gonzalez with him?
I think he did.
Yeah, now. So those 3 albums, and I'm recommending something to you now. The lady, right? It's a very sexy photo of her on the cover.
Yeah, you've sent me this on LinkedIn on Tidal, haven't you? You've sent
St. Vincent. Annie Clark is a proper name.
I think I tried it, and unfortunately. I think I disliked it. Oddly enough, or maybe not oddly enough, last week we had a Burns night dinner that I went to, and the guy that was organising it, I mean, the people are generally our kind of age there, and he said, "Can you? We like a sing song at the end of the night." So I said, "Look, I'm not doing any singing, but I'll put together a little playlist, and we'll kind of go through a few numbers so where they know the chorus." So we did the Proclaimers, 500 Miles. Andy Williams, Can't Take My Eyes Off You. Believe it or not, I even did Lily the Pink, Delilah, Please Release Me, a couple of other, American Pie, fantastic piece of music. And then, I played it. I went through the list to Wendy and my daughter Katie. Katie just said, "There's no women on there." It's the first thing she noticed, no women. And I made the observation the other day, I had a similar musical differences chat with a friend of mine up here, Ed Kenny, and I can look at my record collection there, and I've got some Kate Bush. I've got that album as well, yeah. They say Hounds of Love, that, isn't it? And that is, yeah. And I had Lionheart when that first came out, and I think Neil had the Kick Inside. And I went to see Kate Bush when she played in Hammersmith Odeon, whenever it was, maybe 8 years ago, something like that. But I don't find myself. I've probably got Carole King. I don't know how many other stuff, but anyway, so I'm just trying to think if I did. I'm sure I did put a female into the playlist, but for the life of me, I
Tina
can't
Turner?
remember what it was. I
Tina
can't
Turner?
remember. No, I did look to the.
No.
I was thinking, oh, what can we do? It's got to be something that people sing along to. Sure, I did something. Anyway, it'll
Someone
come to
I've got
me.
into later in life are these, who obviously,
Later in life. Well, that's strange.
yeah, very. I went to see them, and it came about because Johan liked a Japanese cartoon series
Right.
where all the sort of major characters were names of bands, and
Right.
King
And there's a King
Crimson
Crimson.
was a villain. So we went to see them
Where?
in
Albert
Royal
Hall?
Albert Hall
Yeah. Was
in
that a few years ago?
2019.
Yeah, oddly enough, I did a musical differences conversation the other day with an old work colleague of mine up there, Ed Kenny. I think I mentioned him a little earlier,
Yeah.
and he got into King Crimson when he was a young teenager, and he talked about Red. We talked Red to me. I think Red is a great album, but Red is it is, as I said, orally. I think it's really quite violent. There's times where that is discordant, and if you play it at volume, it's quite shocking. But oddly enough, this would have been something. He went to that concert. This is the one with like 3 drummers on stage or something, isn't it? Yeah.
Darlene Harrison, Pat
Yeah.
Mastellato or whatever.
Right. He went to that concert, and I was supposed to go to the concert, but I didn't turn up. I think I got the date mixed up for whatever reason. So I should have been there. I should have been at the. It would have been, if it had been the case, I would have been there on the same night as yourself. So and I did. I told him also about the the Toya Wilcox thing that we went to, where unfortunately Robert Fripp didn't play any King Crimson at all.
No.
I'm sure he must have said, "I'll come on tour with you all because it'll sell some tickets, but I ain't playing any. I'm not playing any of our tunes." I thought we'd get one out of him, so at least we'd get one. I like Islands. I've got Islands.
Yes.
21st Century Schizoid, man. The track is great. That album, I don't know particularly well. Islands, I know really well because I did at one point. I was doing painting, and but whilst painting, listen to that album over and over and over again. And there's a lot of, and that's got a lot of very peaceful, melodic music on it as well, which is not what you typically associate with Robert Fripp. I saw him again. Well, he mentioned a few things come together here because I went to see Daryl Hall at the Hammersmith Odeon recently, and he said that Robert Fripp was in the audience, and because Robert Fripp was doing a Daryl's House. Have you watched any Daryl's House? So
I've seen the. I think you sent me the link, didn't you?
Right.
And they played Red, didn't they? And
I haven't got to, did they?
Yeah, they played Red, the track.
I think I just watched and listened to them playing Heroes, I think, and that was as far as I got. Once we're finished here, I'll probably go back and give that a listen to. Marcus was big into King Crimson. That was the other thing that we had. I don't know whether this makes any sense to you at all, but if you remember, I was one of there was myself, Marcus, Wayne Harris, Vicky Harris's brother, and Rob Evans and Rob Lewis as well. You could say Ray Lewis's brother. But we had
Rob
this
Evans
terrible.
was the drummer, wasn't he?
Rob Evans was the drummer in the band, yeah. But we had this really, I don't know, it was really very strange. We were very territorial, and we were like freeholders. We were like landlords. Jethro Tull was mine. Do you know what I mean? It's like Deep Purple was his, King Crimson was his, Rob Evans at Black Sabbath. And Rob Lewis was a bit of I think all sorts. He might have been Genesis, he might have been Yes, very influenced by his brother. And there was a terrible moment when they were living down the bottom of Gorseinon, and we playing music in his house, and somebody found that he had a copy of Camel, a live music, which was just, you weren't allowed to have that. That's Marcus's band. Did you have? Was that just us my little bunch of cronies, or did you have a similar thing where Pink Floyd was yours? Or did you share? Were you very kind of, like Yes, you like Yes?
Yeah, Mighty was more Yes fan. I was the Floyd. Fact has and always will be the Genesis
It's
band, as you
Genesis.
know. He was telling me the other day that Steve Hackett invented the way everybody plays these days. What do they call it? Fledging or fledging? I don't know.
Really? No. He's on about I don't know what they call it. Kind of it's speed
You know what I
picking,
mean?
basically. No,
Yes.
I don't know. No, I think he's. I can't. I could not think of one thing that Steve Hackett may have invented, other than sitting down playing the guitar. But Robert Fripp was another one that did that as well, though, wasn't he? There were the two of them. They both like their little kind of high stools that they sit on.
Yeah,
But,
yeah.
I oddly enough, I saw I got into Fish recently. Have you ever heard of Fish? This is a
Only was when
new.
he was in
No,
Maria.
no, not that Fish. Phish.
Oh, oh yes, American band, do they?
The Jam Band. They are. This is new to me. It's a complete revelation. I saw something on Twitter about they had a concert at Madison Square Gardens on New Year's Eve.
Oh, you
And it was
sent me a link on this, didn't
I
you?
sent a link. I sent a link. You probably
Fantastic.
haven't watched it, then you haven't watched it. I sat and it's crazy, and I'm kind of getting into that band bit by bit by bit. It's fantastic to realize that the front man, the guitarist, the kind of leader of the band, Trey Anastasia III, I think that's his name, is 58. Sorry, he's 59. He's 60 this year. Same age as me. And the band have been going since 1983. They've been going for 40 years. They kind of took over, they say, from where the kind of Grateful Dead. America has this tradition in some respects of these jam bands where these are the open air concerts, and the band will play different set every night. I saw Rush a number of times. I know that I don't know you really got into Rush. We were big into Rush, and Rush were clinical. My guess is they play exactly the same set every night. Every guitar solo that Alex Lifeson ever did was the same as the guitar solo on the album. There was no improvisation at all. And these jam bands are just totally different. But Fish, they've got 15, I think it's 15 studio albums. It's about 45 live. It's a body of work similar to Zappa's in many respects.
Yeah.
So it's that to me is the going forwards. I think I have many happy years of musical discovery. Now, musical discovery. What I'm gonna, as we begin to kind of wrap up here, if you've never listened to any Fairport convention, I'm gonna have to put together a little playlist. I've ditched my Tidal, by the way. I decided at £30 a month, and I use Spotify more than I use Tidal. But I must do a playlist. The Fairport convention stuff from when they had Sandy Denny there, which is late 60s, early 70s, is some beautiful stuff. And there's a song, Who Knows Where the Time Goes. She wrote it. She was only about 18 at the time when she wrote it.
Sadly, she passed away.
She did. And so that's going to be one of my funereal playlists. I'm considering now, after what you said, of having myself hydrogenized to music. I might see if we could do it with a laser light show, Tangerine Dream playing in the background, and at the same time as that, all of a sudden I shatter into a billion pieces, and away we go. And I've got hello there.
She's as deaf as a postman.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well. Well, I haven't met her. I'm sure I will at some point in the not too distant future.
Yeah. Have you met my dog? Here's my dog, Zappa. Look.
Oh, it's Zappa.
Zappa. Zappa. Come here. Look at Mark.
Come here.
See Zappa?
How old?
10 now. She's an old lady, look.
Yeah, we're like it's a kind of doggy daycare for our two elderly. We're more like a hospice. I think we're spending about £200 a month at the moment on vet bills, just kind of keeping them going. But they're worth every penny. We wouldn't have it any other way. But Fred with us is 15. we thought we'd nearly lost him, not even last year, the year before. And he's managed to turn the corner. And then Mills is 14, and yet she's still like if you saw her, you'd think it was a puppy. So it's.
So we got two labs. One is Zappa there, and the other one is Angus. After Angus,
is it? After Angus, yeah.
Yeah.
And did you ever see AC/DC? You've got to ask.
Yes.
Oh, did you?
The last
No. I think Where was that?
Wembley.
I saw them in about 2015 as well. I saw them at Emirates Stadium. I think it was at the Emirates. I saw Springsteen at the Emirates.
When what's his name was singing with them though? Brian Johnson.
2015. It's Brian Johnson. As I said, I went to see them. Okay, but I
didn't the Guns N' Roses guy sing with them on one?
He did. Axl Rose did at one point. I didn't see that, but the. For me, if you go online, go onto YouTube, you will find there's an AC/DC concert from somewhere like Ipswich or Norwich. It's like Rock Goes to College. Do you remember
Yeah.
And it's Bon Scott. They're just at their prime. I don't know what they are. It's 1976, maybe 1977.
Are you
maybe
a Bon
78
Scott
or something.
or Brian Johnson man?
Well, there's no question. It's all Bon Scott. Brian Johnson, listenable, but
Bon Scott, Another Planet.
It's a completely made the band. It's great what they did. They were able to continue beyond his passing. But if you give me as I said, if I could go back, there's a good question. If I could go back in a time machine to any. Well, there's so many gigs out there, legendary gigs. But I would, that AC/DC. There's a whole bunch of them. AC/DC, in a kind of college, university gig in the 1970s. Slade Alive, that gig. I don't know if you've ever heard Slade Alive, the live album. That's one of my favorites. Who Live at Leeds. Obviously, you might want to be there. But there are kind of legendary gigs out there. If I had the opportunity to go, I'm just trying to think if I ever was at a legendary gig. I don't think I was. I don't think Uriah Heep at the Brangwyn Hall in 1980 fits the bill. So look, I'm gonna let you go. But I wanted to finish. We started on the memories of a man in his old age. The deeds of a man in his prime. And I'm going to end on, which has already come up here, but I say, taking away the moments that make up a dull day. You fritter and waste the hours in an offhand way. So I want to thank you. Hopefully we haven't ticked away too many moments here this evening, all right, or wasted our time. We may have frittered and wasted the hours away, but I think for me, I've really enjoyed it. Covered an awful lot of ground. I found it a lot of fun too. We'll have to do it again sometime.